Around copies of the Union Constitution that we'll be voting on, copies of the minutes from the past two meetings, and copies of the GM Week handbook. I also have a card for Shoshana's mother to thank her for helping to cook for everyone. Please sign it. Everyone can sign it if you want because everyone was invited, but I'm just going to pass it this way. Don't write massive because the e-board is going to sign this as well, so we're going to make room for everyone. Or we could do that. I don't at this point.
They can sign it back.
All right. So I passed around agendas. Okay, I'm sorry.
That sucks to suck.
Anyways, we're going to move to the first motion. This is actually not on the agenda. I forgot to put it there.
Wait, are we actually going to solve this?
Yeah.
We'll just start.
All right. The first motion. The Rensselaer Union 44th Student Senate, whereas the Independent Council was created at a time when independents compromised the minority of students at Rensselaer, whereas the Independent Council was created to expand the social and extracurricular life of independents, whereas independents now comprise a supermajority of students at Rensselaer and the Rensselaer Union serves the intended functions of the Independent Council, whereas the Independent Council, being constituted separately from the Union, has announced its intentions to dissolve following Grand Marshal Week 2014, resolved that the Student Senate hold elections for the Independent Council Senator positions open to any independent during Grand Marshal Week 2014, with independent status to be determined by the Dean of Students' office. Further resolved that the Student Senate hold elections for the Independent Council Senators for all future Grand Marshal Weeks. Further resolved that the Student Senate recognizes the dissolution of the Independent Council following the conclusion of Grand Marshal Week 2014, as well as the Council's rights to dissolve itself. So moved by Frank, the IC President. All right. Are there any questions for this motion? I think I'll pass this to Frank to kind of give a brief synopsis as to what this is.
So, this is part of, I think, an effort to solve the representation issue. For this year in particular, our plan the whole time was to move to some sort of direct elected independent senators, because it's really the way they're chosen now is not the most democratic in that it's 3 people deciding 2 senator seats. So we'd like to move it to directly elected by the student body with all of the details of that handled by Senate, as Senate does through R&E with every other Senate position. Furthermore, also dissolving IC at the conclusion of GM Week 2014. This is kind of, it works whether or not the Constitution passes. If the Constitution doesn't pass, both senators will still be in charge of the Senate as far as electing them. And if it does pass, it'll be the same thing. So it's not really dependent on that. But any questions on that, or if there needs to be discussion? Shoshana's going to be queuing today.
Well, I've been looking through old poly records recently, and I'd just like to point out that when the Independent Council was formed in 1962, the Greek to independent ratio was approximately 1-to-1. So they did not, in fact, there may not have been, in fact, a minority. There may, that's just, but just to clarify for myself, you're saying that if this passes, it won't affect the Constitution anymore? I'm sorry, I'm a little confused on that, because I thought we could only change the Constitution. We could only change how people are elected by changing the Constitution.
No. Senate, in the current Constitution as it works now, Senate can decide the eligibility requirements for any elected position. So this would be legislation that basically establishes eligibility requirements for IC senators by virtue of the IC passing that responsibility off to Senate.
So for the sake of historical accuracy, can we simply remove the first whereas?
That's going to be unfriendly, so if you'd like to debate that amendment, you can go ahead. You can do that.
Or can we fine?
All right, so we have an amendment on the floor to the motion. The amendment is to strike the first whereas. I'll reread it. Whereas the independent council was created at a time when independents comprised a minority of students at Rensselaer. We are only discussing the amendment, not the motion. Are there any questions? Or things people want to talk about?
What was it being amended to?
Striking the first whereas. I see none. Greg, would you like to?
Fine, okay. I've been looking through old polys trying to discern exactly what the point of the independent council was. In November of 1962, I found a poly article that explicitly called for the creation of an independent council, which they soon did. At that time, independents and Greeks were more or less 50-50. Those were the percentages of Greeks and independents on campus. I just, for the sake of historical accuracy, I would just like that first whereas strike, because it states that the independent council was created at a time when there was a minority of students on campus, of independents on campus, and that is not entirely accurate. But it's not that big of a deal.
I'd like to keep it in because maybe it wasn't created at the exact time when independents comprised a minority of students on campus. But there was a time when there were more Greeks than independents, and I think it's important to recognize that given the fact that independents now are a large majority of students.
Do we know when that time was?
Before now.
So there's no record of this time.
There probably is. I don't think that is that important at all for this motion because it doesn't affect what it will be. It really seems kind of frivolous to me.
Right.
Well, I agree, which is why I was hoping you would make it friendly, and why I have not.
Okay, this is a very black and white issue. There's really no gray area here, so I think if there's no further discussion, we're going to move to a vote. Okay?
On the amendment.
On the amendment.
Sorry.
All those in favor? Yes.
Just for clarification, this amendment is about getting rid of one word.
No, it's
No.
getting rid of,
There we go.
there's a couple whereases here. It's removing whereas the independent council was created at a time when independents comprised a minority of students at Rensselaer. Removing that whereas. So by voting yes for this amendment, you're removing that. Okay? Everyone understand? All those in favor? Raise your hands if you want to. Everyone's like kind of hesitant about this. All those opposed? Oop, no, not for that. Not for that. All those opposed? Sorry, I didn't see it. Yeah, passes. 2/3. For an amendment, yeah, it's 2/3.
An amendment to a motion.
I'm pretty sure that's a
Yeah,
majority.
Yeah,
Look at the bylaws.
whatever.
No, it's
Check
Robert's rules.
Robert's rules, please.
The suspense is killing me too.
Did you just not?
No.
So it actually.
It's majority. Okay, so that line is gone. It's the small victories. So now to the whole motion.
Back to the main cue, Paul.
Well, I think that this motion proposed by Frank is a good idea since it A, will take care of making sure that the independent senators are elected in a more transparent and democratic way, and B, since the idea of getting rid of the Greek senators initially rose out of balancing the scales of the Senate in terms of Greek to independent ratio, it would take care of that problem as well. So let's all get on with our lives.
Okay.
Great.
To clarify, I'm just really speaking on behalf of the IC for this. I can't motion anything because I'm not a voting member. So actually on the motion, I've moved it on behalf of the independent council per the bylaws, IFC, Panhandle, and IC can submit legislation directly to the Senate for debate, so that's what this is about.
Tina, can you just reread the motion as it currently stands?
Yes, I can. Whereas, and I'll start from the beginning, the Rensselaer Union 44th Student Senate, whereas the Independent Council was created to expand the social and extracurricular life of Independence, whereas Independence now comprise a supermajority of students at Rensselaer, and the Rensselaer Union serves the intended functions of the Independent Council, whereas the Independent Council, being constituted separately from the Union, has announced its intentions to dissolve following Grand Marshal Week 2014. Resolved that the Student Senate hold elections for the Independent Council Senator positions, open to any independent during Grand Marshal Week 2014, with independent status to be determined by the Dean of Students' Office. Further resolved that the Student Senate hold elections for the Independent Council Senators for all Grand Marshal weeks. Further resolved that the Student Senate recognizes the dissolution of the Independent Council following the conclusion of Grand Marshal Week 2014, as well as the Council's right to dissolve itself.
Yeah.
So this is saying that for this election and then all subsequent elections, the independent council will be voted on by the independent student body?
Yes.
I know we're not talking about Greek issue now, but it is the opinion of the Panhellenic Council and the Interfraternity Council that the two positions for Greek senator be moved to a direct election during GM week by the Greek student body. So I feel like that would fit in well with this.
IFC and Panhandle currently determine the method in which their senator is elected.
Well, yeah, but I'm just like the Senate no.
I'm simply saying your councils have the authority to make that decision.
Yeah.
Okay.
But just so that clears up. Tina?
So you said that this would be voted on by the independents of the student body. How do we classify this? Can we do that? Is that a-
I like the point of information. Can I do that?
Yeah.
So Dean Hunt has this nifty system for telling people who's Greek or not, and he does that on elections, so you can track the 5-star points. So you can get the reverse of that, and then he's not Greek.
Frank?
No, it's my point.
Why was more for like this?
Yeah, you can, so attached to every RIN, there's information, and when vote counting happens, you can exclude those who aren't eligible to vote for certain positions. So like we exclude by class year, we can certainly exclude by,
So it'd be like an after check.
yeah.
Okay. Because I was like, there's no way for us to check at.
No, but it's after.
Yeah.
Motion to vote?
No.
I see no one in the queue. All right. Does anyone want me to reread the motion? The Rensselaer Union 44th Student Senate, whereas the Independent Council was created to expand the social and extracurricular life of Independence, whereas Independence now comprise a supermajority of students at Rensselaer, and the Rensselaer Union serves the intended functions of the Independent Council, whereas the Independent Council, being constituted separately from the Union, has announced its intentions to dissolve following Grand Marshal Week 2014. Resolved that the Student Senate hold elections for the Independent Council Senator positions, open to any independent during Grand Marshal Week 2014, with independent status to be determined by the Dean of Students' Office. Further resolved that the Student Senate hold elections for the Independent Council Senators for all future Grand Marshal weeks. Further resolved that the Student Senate recognizes the dissolution of the Independent Council following the conclusion of Grand Marshal Week 2014, as well as the Council's right to dissolve itself. So moved by Frank, the IC President. All right, we'll now move to vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? This motion passes 22-0. All right, moving to the Big Daddy. The Rensselaer Union 44th Student Senate, Whereas the Rensselaer Union Constitution is in need of revisions, whereas the Constitution Committee was charged with recommending such revisions, whereas the recommendations of the committee has been presented to the Senate, resolved that the Senate approves the attached amendments to the Rensselaer Union Constitution to be voted on by the members of the Union. So moved by Frank Abissi, the Constitution Committee Chairman.
Frank?
Again, to clarify why I'm moving this one, because it's the recommendation of the committee, it's being submitted directly to the Senate for legislation. A couple of things on how we do debate here, just for those who haven't gone into how long before, although a lot of us were here for the end of last year. So obviously we'll raise hands to get on the queue. When there's a motion to amend, we then go to a sub queue, and then you'll raise your hands to get on that. Once that has been exhausted or voted on, we'll go back to the main queue. Other things, any questions on this would go directly to me. You saw before about Greg's amendment, friendly versus unfriendly. Because I think it's good that we discuss any changes in here that aren't incidental, like punctuation or spelling. I'm going to treat all amendments as unfriendly, which means they'll go to a queue to discuss, but if it's something small, it's a friendly amendment and it can just be changed. So just kind of a preface for the discussion.
Greg?
Okay, so first I'd just like to start off by moving to split the motion between the entire Constitution, accepting Article 4, Section 3, and the entire rest, so that we may consider everything except the Greek issue, and then when that highly controversial topic comes up, we can, just pay as much attention as possible.
It's not being amended.
So you're calling for division of the question?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Point of clarification, I don't understand, since Article 4, Section 3 doesn't have any amendments in this Constitution.
It's an entirely new Constitution, so.
No, but there's other amendments. So you can amend the motion, like the whole thing has been amended ridiculously, but
Is there a second to Greg's? Okay. Greg, can you repeat what you want to do?
Okay, I would like to split the entire, I would like to divide the question so that we may first consider the entirety of the Union Constitution with accepting the highly controversial section, Article 4, Section 3. I would like to discuss the entirety of the Constitution with that, accepting that one section first, so that we may debate all that and not get way down and caught up in something that seems that is more or less very separate.
Okay. Then seconded. So, which means that if you have any questions to discuss the Union Constitution, that section cannot be one of them. We're going to obviously get to it. It's not negating the conversation, but questions regarding the whole Constitution without the Greek senator or any of the Senate.
are you applying to any of the Senate part? Does that recommend that you don't?
He just says there's a section for it.
I said the section,
Okay.
Article 4 is
So everything else. I know we don't see discussion.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Let's see if we can do that. Just vote on the motion.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so there's a second to Greg's motion. All those in favor to do this, to have this conversation without discussing the Greeks first. Okay, passes. I don't need to write down the vote. All right, so now any discussion on the Constitution without the Greek senator discussion. Shoshana is.
I can't see hands, Michael. Kyle.
Okay, so Article 9, Elections, Section 1. I would simply like to add to the last sentence, that all these elections will be held concurrently each year during the spring semester at a time and place determined by the Senate. This is to guarantee that the senators are elected at the same time as the GM, same time as the PU, etc. We couldn't, for example, have senators elected next week, GM will be elected 2 weeks later, and so on.
Can you please spell the change?
So the way this would read, I'm just going to read the last sentence for the sake of clarity. Section 1, the final sentence would be shall be held concurrently each year during the spring semester at a time and place determined by the Senate.
All right, Frank, is that friendly or unfriendly?
But does anyone have any objections to that change?
What happens if we have to have an additional election for one position? Because that would be
This specifies general elections, which if there's additional elections, those are special elections. So.
Just to kind of add on to that, the term general election is used here because it's used throughout the document to define term limits. So special elections won't affect the term limits for a position.
So I'm going to say that's a friendly amendment.
Okay, so it's added in. Further discussion on the whole document?
Oh, okay. Well, first off, I wanted to point out in Article 9 that the word section is spelled wrong.
All right.
No, all already got pointed out.
Okay. So I know it kind of explains it in the comments already, but I was wondering the philosophical reason why we decided to get rid of the UC. I understand that it's because that membership has been an issue and there's efforts to revive it, but is there any reason why we decided to give up on that for 1 year?
So Kyle can better answer that.
Kyle's on here.
Cool. So the undergraduate council was established at a time when the undergraduate body was small enough that it could be represented by a single council. Over the years, as the undergraduate population grew, its representation was split up between the 4 class councils. Until the past few years, the UC really didn't exist. Upon efforts to revive it, it became abundantly clear that its role was outmoded and could best be fulfilled through other means. What we've done in place of the undergraduate council is provided a means by which the class presidents will communicate in a bi-semesterly meeting chaired by the Grand Marshal. The entire purpose of the UC has been communication and networking between the class years. If this can be accomplished by a single meeting rather than having a separately constituted body, it's better to simplify rather than cause any conflict of interest or communication gap that could result otherwise.
Jacob?
I want to add to that. The UC doesn't have a really clear funding source, so the way that we ended up having to try to do big group events was by trying to take money from the councils and get them to try to buy into that. And that was kind of a conflict of interest between the UC and each of the individual class councils. So they weren't really too happy about that. So really, unless the UC could have been guaranteed some sort of revenue stream that they could do their own things independently of the rest of the councils, they really don't serve any big event planning purpose. So.
What Kyle was referencing is Article 7, Section 4, that requires a class semester meeting for the undergraduate class council presidents convened by the
Mike?
I have some questions. Frank, section, Article 9, still, I guess we're here. Section 10, or Section 10.
Yeah.
Can you explain what the difference between the highest number of votes and the plurality of votes is?
I believe that's numbers. Are they? I thought they were. We can.
So Section 10 and 8 can be combined, basically. At the same point, there's no rules in here how to elect a class vice president.
So are you motioning
Yeah, I don't know how to do it. Okay, so motion to add vice president rules to the Constitution, because they're in here. And combine section 8 and 10, I guess.
Section 10 of
I'll
which
second.
article?
Yeah.
Where the heck's section 10?
We should discuss that. So that'll be.
Okay.
Wait, which one's first?
You don't know what we want to do
Oh, I can't count.
Okay. We have a new queue now.
Which one?
Whatever.
Alright, so I motion to combine section 8 and 10 and to add vice president to the language. You want?
That can be one motion. You would just have to remove section 10 and add to section 8 president and vice president.
What Kyle say? A motion.
You second.
Yeah, it's like a Kyle motion, my motion.
Do you rescind your motion?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess I'm motioning to amend on that we strike section 10 and insert into section 8 the candidates for class president, class vice president, etc. There we go.
I think the reason I used plurality in one, and actually, this is actually both are unchanged from the current constitution. I believe the reason plurality is used in one place and highest number of votes in another is because there's one winner in plurality, one person who has more than everyone else, versus highest number is like the four people with the highest for senators, versus like one person may have a plurality as far as the senators go, but it's really just those who have more votes than the other candidates. So in this case, I don't think they were meant to mean the same thing. But again, that's unchanged from what we currently have.
So Frank, what you're saying is that the plural candidates is kind of what makes it different.
Yeah.
That might not be relevant because it's spelled out that there's only one class president and only one class president, so we can't elect multiple anyways.
Vice president.
Right, yeah. Yeah. So it's a non-issue.
Right, so I'm saying that in the section 8, where it's the candidates for senators and class council representatives, you need it to be highest number of votes. And then in section 10, you need it to, you could say highest number of votes again, but plurality also works. We can combine them. If we combine them, we have to say highest number of votes.
That's the amendment on the table, so.
So, I know we kind of discussed it, but is that friendly or unfriendly? Make it friendly?
Doesn't change the meaning.
Okay. In your motion, did you add vice president to the language
Yes.
as well? Okay.
So it would read the candidates for class president, class vice president, senators, and class council representatives receiving the highest number of votes shall be elected.
Can we put senators first?
Does it really matter?
No, because then class president, vice president, and representatives are next to each other.
That's fair. So are you amending my amendment?
I'm
No.
friendly suggesting it.
That friendly was suggested, so it's done. It's already passed. That's another suggestion, another amendment. Is that friendly? Yep. Okay. See, we can make this easy. All right.
We can get along.
So that has been taken care of.
Back to the queue where we're talking about the whole Constitution except for the Greek issue, and there's no one on the queue. Mike is on the queue.
I have another question about section 9, Article 9. So usually in the years past, we have not voted for our officers in the grad class. Section 1 in the Constitution here says we will have to vote for officers in grad council. Is that on purpose or?
Officers references the president and vice president.
Yes, so in years past we have not voted on them generally. Even in this GM handbook here, we're not voting on them.
Yeah. You're right, that is different.
Yeah, officers.
Well, do you want to talk
Oh,
about
that's
that?
what it just as it was, or?
I mean, I guess, I don't know, we overlooked that.
Okay.
Committee. I mean, you were there.
The question really is, we have a limited people who want to apply for this stuff in the first place, and to have someone reigning as class president and having a bunch of council members who actually want to do this job, and then being run by someone who gets 3 votes is kind of silly. Where, as of now, we vote to the council after the president, as you see before. So I like to motion to amend the rid of graduate in this section.
Okay. So that is on the floor. Is it friendly or unfriendly? That amendment. Unfriendly. All right, so we now have a separate queue discussing that issue.
Greg and
So, as I understand it, now the motion would read, should this change pass, the general elections of the Grand Marshal, President of the Union, the officers and representatives of each of the senior, junior, and sophomore class councils, and the senators for each of the senior, junior, and sophomore class councils shall be held each year during spring semester at a time of list determined. Is that what we want?
So I guess there's any more tedious than this too. Just remove grad and officers in that sentence there. It'd be another sentence long. I guess that'd be the representatives of the graduate, senior, junior, sophomore class councils, the officers of the senior, junior, and sophomore class councils, and the senators of the graduate, senior, junior, and sophomore class councils.
I think you mentioned it, so, but just to clarify, you said the members of the graduate class council would choose the class or elect the class. Okay. So how's the class council's elected members during January?
It's representatives. Yeah.
I'll pass.
Okay. Is there any other questions, discussion points for this topic?
Do we have to add in that the Grad Council will elect its own president and vice president and report it to the Senate or anything like that? No?
It's dictated by your bylaws. Any other questions?
Yeah, just a comment to Kristen. As the Constitution's laid out now, your president and vice president role are guaranteed by the class council section. The election process is not spelled out for them, so your bylaws can determine that.
Just to make sure I have this correct. After the GMD part, the officers of graduate, so forth class council, and then the representatives, or no, the officers of the senior, just exclude graduate from the officers section.
Yeah, but still representatives.
And then still representatives. Gotcha.
So just, I know we have some people who are new. You 3 are graduate senators, right?
Yes.
Okay. And that is your recommendation? Okay. No, that's good. Everyone's on the same page. Any other comments? Otherwise, we'll move to vote. Okay.
just to clarify, we're getting rid of the second grade in section
First graduate.
It's more tedious than that.
Yeah, it's inserting another list of the classes when one of them says officers. And
Do you want to read it?
Yeah, I can read it. I'll read the whole section with the amendments. The general elections of the Grand Marshal, the President of the Union, the officers of the senior, junior, and sophomore class councils, the representatives of each of the graduate, senior, junior, and sophomore class councils, and the senators for each of the graduate, senior, junior, and sophomore class councils shall be held concurrently each year during the spring semester at a time and place determined by the Senate.
Any other comments?
I have a better wording for this. Okay, so it would be, we would leave it as it is now, take graduate out of the first sentence as Mike proposed, and for the second sentence, simply add the representatives of the graduate class council, and move on from there, rather than having to list everything.
So that's the one from the issue.
Okay.
No, we should vote on this one.
We're going to vote on this, and then we can friendly in the new language. All right? Yes, that's a verb I used. All right.
Friendly it in.
All those in favor for this change? All those opposed? Okay, passed. I believe there was a wording change.
Yes. So just to read what it'll look like now, the general elections of the GM, the PU, the officers and representatives of each of the senior, junior, and sophomore class councils, the representatives of the graduate class council, and the senators, etc., will be held concurrently each year during the spring semester, and so on.
It's friendly? All right, it's in. Okay. Cruising through these.
40 minutes in.
Any other comments?
This is once again referring to the entirety of the Constitution and except for just making sure. So Article 13, Section 1. It says a referendum on any matter splitting amendments to the Constitution shall be held whenever the Senate approves a proposal requiring a referendum by a 2/3 vote, or whenever the Senate receives a petition signed by 20% of the membership of the Union. I would like to see the 20% drop to perhaps 15 or else a flat rate of 1,000 because the school is growing in numbers and 20% of the membership of the Union will quickly become almost unattainable by realistic standards. So,
Is that a motion?
yes, I am motioning to reword it to say, whenever the Senate receives a petition signed by 15% of the membership of the Union or 1,000 members of the Union, whichever is smaller.
It's unfriendly. Is there a second to his amendment?
Second.
Okay. Yes.
What's 20% of the population right now?
Over 1,400.
Can you, before we continue, Craig, can you please repeat what wording you would like?
Okay, I would like, it will say,
Start with whenever the Senate.
or whenever the Senate receives a petition signed by 15% or 1,000, or sorry, whenever the Senate receives a petition signed by 15% of the membership of the Union or 1,000 members of the Union.
You said
Whichever is
smaller?
Yes, whichever is smaller.
Yes.
Okay, I'm on the queue. We should not have a flat number because the influx of the incoming classes makes the total number of students of the student body very variable, especially in the future. Tina?
If I'm recalling from Constitution Committee correctly, the 20% matches somewhere else in this document, and I just can't find it right now. Can someone point to me where that matches with?
Is that a question? If that's a question directed to me, it's in removals for the petition to remove GM and
Is
PU.
that section 9?
That is section 11.
Or maybe it's the.
Oh, sorry, Article 11. Let's see, section 1, I believe. Yeah.
Sections
Section
1 and 3.
So I guess my point on that is that 20% just keeps it consistent in all places.
Mike?
It's also in section 3 of the same article.
Michael?
So, Greg, you said you wanted whichever is lower because the student population continues to grow.
Oh,
You can
I'm
just do
sorry,
that.
yeah.
Incorrect. I wanted it to be a number that is attainable. Because as the institute grows, 20%, like, it's already incredibly difficult to get 1,400 unique signatures. It's actually more than 1,400. So I think 1,000, that should, and if this needs to be amended later, that's fine. But for the foreseeable future, 1,000 or 15%, whichever is lower, I think represents a large enough portion of the student body that we can say this is important enough for a referendum.
Hi.
I was the one who suggested consistency between the percentage for removal and the percentage for referendum. And this was because I want a petition process to be fairly straightforward. Whether you're petitioning for removal of an officer or for a vote on a particular motion, we should have a single threshold that has to be met.
Paul?
Yeah, I agree with Greg that it should be cut, sort of the number should be cut down because, sort of like, as he said, the current scale of the school's growth. Because if it's 20%, then that makes it something like the entire freshman graduating class or something. Getting them to sign something which would be impossibly hard to actually get done. So, and really like at a later time, if the school continues to grow, will people need to change the number to be in scale with whatever the population is then? Yes, but sort of, we should take care of scaling it to what is appropriate now, rather than worrying about maybe in 15 years they'll have to rescale it, which they may, but that's their problem.
Frank?
I think it would, I mean, changing the percent I think is fine. I don't know if consistency should be an issue here, but I'd agree with Shoshana. I would recommend shying away from a flat rate number as far as the number of students you get. Because again, there could be a situation where the number of students goes down significantly and 1,000 could be literally unattainable. And I mean, I know whichever is smaller does take care of it, but I think having a percentage is so much simpler and allows it to, I guess, change with the size of the population.
Michael?
I was going to say just that. You said because the numbers might fluctuate, that's why we have both the percentage and the flat number. Because the population of the school continues to change. But if it's going to change, and you suggested that we would have to change the number later, maybe, then why don't we just not? You said if we have to change the 1,000 at some point later on, we can just do that. But why not just have a percentage, because that fluctuates with the population anyway.
Right.
That's the question. Okay. Okay, my main concern here, I understand the theoretical basis of having a nice percentage that will probably last, that has probably more staying power than a flat number. At the same time, here we are redoing this Constitution that I'm sure, like we did the Constitution last year, and people 20 years ago probably had a conversation very similar to this. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to remind you all that everything changes over time, and trying to make a bulletproof document that will stand forever is damn near impossible. The founding fathers spent several weeks, and okay, I'm going off on tangent here, but the idea is that it's not just about the fluctuating numbers, it's just making this a realistic thing to be done. And I think that's incredibly important in a democratic system such as this.
All right, let's keep the points new. This is a relatively minor point. It could be big. I realize that because it's a petition for a referendum, but new discussion points. Otherwise, we're going to move to vote.
If you're worried about consistency between the two percentages, why can't you just also amend the second percentage?
Jessica?
I think it makes sense to have the consistency, like the 20% within the renewables, but not necessarily throughout the whole document, because it's like 20% in both the sections of renewables, which is what was brought up, and then the other concepts. So the have the 15% in the referendum, but not necessarily have to be in the document.
I just want to point out that with about 6,500 students on campus, 15% of the union membership is 975 people.
Chase?
What I was going to say is already said.
I'm on the queue. Has any student ever come forth with the idea of asking for a referendum besides start? No, okay.
I believe we had someone suggest a referendum to us via email in cabinet earlier.
In terms of has the Senate received one?
No, not received. Has anyone said can I do this?
Yeah, that's it.
Michael?
I just wanted to point out before he said that we should keep your points that I don't think we should be designing the Constitution so that it can be changed every year. Which you said that you wanted that the Constitution is constantly changing, but I don't think we should say it's going to change next year, so why not just have it somewhere?
No.
Kyle?
Can I call the question? I'm going to call the question, yeah.
All right. I don't think we need to a second for that?
What is calling the question?
I
Call
do
to a
need a
vote.
second for that. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Question has been called. We're going to move to vote to end discussion, essentially. So we need a 2/3 vote. We're not voting on the issue, just to end discussion on the issue. Everyone understand? All right. All those in favor for ending discussion? It passes. Okay. Discussion has been ended. We're now going to move to a vote. Frank, can you read the language that was outlined by Greg for his motion?
A referendum on any matter excluding amendments to this Constitution shall be held whenever the Senate approves a proposal requiring a referendum by a 2/3 vote, or whenever the Senate receives a petition signed by 15% of the membership of the Union, or 1,000 members of the Union, whichever is smaller. So this is yes or no on that language specifically.
Majority.
Yes.
All those in favor for that language? If it's a yes, put your hands up.
Okay, all those opposed?
Keep them up. Okay, the motion fails. So we're at 20%. Back to what it's originally in, the Union Constitution, in this recommendation. Yes?
I don't know, but can I?
Amend down to 15.
Yeah.
Just 15?
Just 15%, not on the flat.
Yes. Okay, so there's a motion on the floor. We have a second. The language would just change from 20 to 15%. There's no 1,000 members, or whichever is smaller, just
Point of
15%.
order. Would this be changing both Article 13, Section 1, and...
No.
No, just 13, section 1. Or-
Just in
yeah,
referendum,
that's
Article 13, Section 1. Discussion.
I don't know if anyone's done that yet, but by how many numbers, or how many people is this changing?
1,399 according to the RPI.
How much is it changing, not how much is it?
Stop the back and forth. Who's on the queue?
No one's on the queue because no one raises their hand, Greg.
Okay, I'd like to clarify, your numbers seem to be coming from only taking into account undergraduates. Graduate students are in fact members of the union. That makes the number currently above 7,000. So it is over 1,500 as of right now, if we want a referendum of 20%.
I was taking these numbers from the RPI website. It's almost exactly 7,000 with the grad students. So, but his number was right with the 40%. It is 13.
Michael?
Okay, so how much is it changing from 20% to 15%?
Can someone do a quick calculation for that?
Already did. It'll be 1,050 students from 1399. Yeah. 1,400.
Difference of 350. Are there any other comments? For the most part, this is kind of just what you believe. I don't know if anyone's going to sway you on this. Seeing no other
Chase.
comments.
I mean, I'm just gonna say, I think it should be moved down because it should be easy. Or like 1,050 people is a lot of people. That should be heard.
Seeing no other comments, we'll move to vote. All those in favor of changing from 20% to 15% in Article 13, Section 1 of referendum, the Union Constitution, raise your hands. Yeah, okay, it's good. Whew. All right. Back to the main queue for the Union Constitution minus the Greek senator representation.
Paul?
I'd like the motion to change Article 11, Sections 1 and 3 to also, instead of being 20% for starting the removal process for Grand Marshal or President of the Union, or class officer to be 15% as well instead of 20%, just because it doesn't really make sense to have different things to bring stuff up to the student body.
So there's a second for that.
Second.
There's a second for it. All right, so we're discussing Article 11, removals, Section 1 and Section 3, I believe. Is that correct, Paul?
Yes.
Okay. And that is changing the 20% in both to 15. The reason given to match the motion that we just passed for referendum.
If I overheard, you might be talking about the 50%. There's a 50% petition in there. To clarify, the 50% petition, if that were achieved, that would just straight up remove GM or PU. So that's why that threshold is higher, because it doesn't require a removal election. It's just you get 50% of members of the union to sign, they're out immediately.
This was about 20s.
Okay, so about the change from 20 to 15 in Section 1 and 3 for Grand Marshal PU, Senator, Class Council Officer, and Class Council Representative. Comments, discussions, questions, anything?
Yes. There's one difference with it, at least with Section 3. The 20% is of the constituency, not of the union, of members of the union, which is different, because if I'm correct, constituency would be like, if class 2017 seminary, it would be of just class of 2017, which is a difference of numbers. And then the second point I was going to make to that is, I think keeping it the 20% is okay, because renewables is, I guess, a different issue than referendums, and should have a slightly higher number just because it's a greater issue in a way.
Well, how is temporarily changing an officer who has a one-year term limit more important than changing a document that establishes rules that are as are until stated? Since the Constitution has more staying value than whoever's in an office for a time period, so I think the Constitution is as, if not more important, than the people who are currently holding the office. So, and also in terms of the class sizes, part of the reason we said that we should change the other numbers because all of the class sizes are currently growing and always changing, and that's still will be happening with class sizes as well as the other things. So and just it's a more consistent value across everything for student government.
Jessica.
I guess to clarify what I meant by that is that, what like a referendum having that lower makes sense, because that's an issue for people to break up versus a removal, having it slightly higher, kind of gets rid of having a certain group of people bring up a removal or something.
Thanks. Is there a question for, is it 20% currently in the Constitution?
For
Removal?
removals?
Yes. Yes.
Let me make sure.
Yeah, we can move on while he looks up. The queue is empty.
Has there ever been an attempt made to remove in the past few years? Sir?
In the past few years, no.
Okay.
Just give me a couple secs.
Yeah, this is.
Yeah, it was 20%. So the motion is to change the 20% in both Section 1 and Section 3 of Article 11 for removals of the Union Constitution in front of me to 15. Any other comments before we move to vote? Seeing none, all those in favor of changing it to 15% for both, raise your hand. So yes. All those opposed? All right, it fails. It stays with 20% for both. All right, moving on. Back to the main queue. queue empty.
Frank?
Okay, so I've got some things that need to be discussed. And so I'm gonna say some things that I think maybe if people were willing, they should move to amend, because I can't do that. So we're looking at Article 3, Section 6C, regarding the Executive Board, Judicial Board bringing charges against the Director of the Union. It was noted to me that there's an actual legal issue with the way this was worded, because if the charges brought against the Director of the Union were not consistent with Institute Human Resources policy, then a person affected by that could sue the members of the Executive Board and they wouldn't be covered under the Institute insurance. So what I think, if someone was so inclined, it should be amended to would be to add at the end of Section C, the sentence, "The Judicial Board shall present its findings to the Vice President for Student Life of Rensselaer," because VP Student Life, Dr. Sams, is the head of the Student Life Department and the direct superior of the Director of the Union, and so they would be the ones actually equipped to handle that situation. So maybe someone should motion.
I'm on the queue, I will motion to add that wording.
Is there a second? All those in front?
It's going to be unfriendly.
Okay. It's unfriendly, so.
You said Dean of Student Experience?
Vice President for Student Life.
Oh, okay, sorry.
If you were a pro, we wouldn't have this issue. Any other comments for this change, this particular motion on that wording? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All those in favor? Cool, done.
So another suggested change for things would be in, careful now, this is going to be in Article 4, but it's not going to have anything to do with Section 3. And it would be Section 6, kind of to reflect what actually happens and the actual authority of Senate and E-Board here. Section 6, I think, should read, it shall ratify the Executive Board's recommendation on the union budget to the Institute Board of Trustees by a 2/3 vote, because the Senate, that's what you guys do, is actually recommend to the Board of Trustees that this is what the union budget will be. It's not an actual approval of the budget. So that wording would be more accurate and more within the jurisdiction of the union.
Tina motion.
What I do?
This is second. This is an unfriendly motion. Are there any comments?
Just wondering, would making this change necessitate any changes to Article 5, which entails the duties and everything else of that Executive Board?
No, it fits in there because what it says is that in Section 6 of the E-Board section, it says, "It shall investigate, prepare, and recommend to the Institute Board of Trustees the union budget for the upcoming fiscal year." And then what the Senate does is ratify that suggestion, make that suggestion legitimate, but this is the actual recommendation of student government. So no, it would not affect them.
This is a queue update. Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll move to vote on that particular language change. All those in favor? All those opposed? Passes.
So moving right away. Article 5, Section 8 on the Executive Board reads, "It shall approve the hiring and continuance of all administrative personnel of the union." I believe this is a holdover from a long time ago. It was just kind of kept in there. That section, I think, should be struck. It is completely meaningless because that's not what the E-Board does. The E-Board does kind of get involved in interviews and stuff with union staff, but by no means does it approve their hiring or their continued employment. Again, I think this does present a legal issue. It would be easiest if this was just struck from the Constitution.
Is there a motion for this language?
I am motioning, but with the change of may recommend to the director of the union. Because correct me if I'm wrong, can I ask a question? Jill, you're here, right? Okay. Joe, so like last year, didn't the executive board members interview Holly at some point and recommend to you to hire her?
Yeah.
Can we add may recommend to hire staff to the director?
My issue with that is that they can do that anyway. Is that something that it needs to be the Constitution?
Okay.
Before we do that, I think, so you agree that it should be struck in your motion, but you want to add language saying that the executive board can recommend such people?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second for that? Because that's our motion.
Yeah.
Her motion's to replace the language.
Is there a second for her language?
Second.
Okay.
To strike and replace?
To strike and replace.
Sure.
You know, the language that we would be voting on.
Kyle?
I actually don't think it's necessary to put in any language detailing who can recommend what. The E-Board communicates regularly with the director of the union, as does the Student Senate, so either body has the option of freely speaking its mind and recommending staff for hire, etc.
Right.
I think it's not bad what you're proposing. My trepidation with that, again, would be regarding HR policy and the legal implications of that. I think we avoid that if we just keep that out of view. Obviously, students are always making, recommendations on different staff members just by the nature of whether or not they're good. Is this service good? Is this person helping us? So I would shy away from that.
Other comments?
The other option, you could list both, and students could have the option of referring to either whoever they're comfortable with.
Wait, wait.
If I'm hearing her correctly, does it say now that it would go to the VP, or where is it?
This is, no, this just says it shall approve the hiring and continuance of all administrative personnel.
Okay.
Talking about striking that and adding in language that the executive board can provide a recommendation for those hires.
Okay.
There are no other comments? Does everyone understand the idea? I think we're still trying to figure out the language for this. I don't know if we can do that without the actual language. Okay, so just give us a couple seconds. Review the union constitution if you have any other changes. We don't want to waste time here. Also review the minutes that I passed out and the handbook if you didn't when I sent it out earlier or attended.
I've been doing this longer than you, sorry.
I'm still
I'm just lost, right?
What I lost
Everyone,
Actually, that could come.
I mean, this is a motion.
can someone motion to recess for?
Motion to recess.
Okay, we're gonna convene in 5 minutes. Everyone find your seat, we're starting now.
Thank you. You're doing the hard work.
Oh my god.
So, the wording for the motion proposed by Shoshana and seconded by Greg, I believe, right? Or seconded by someone.
Seconded by someone.
By a person, it happens.
No, it was Paul.
Okay.
No, Paul was the second.
Paul was the second, okay.
It's all me.
Should I read?
Can you please read the language?
So if this language is acceptable, Section 8 now reads, "It may make recommendations regarding union administrative personnel to the Vice President of Student Life, Rensselaer."
Okay, point of information, wouldn't it make more sense for the director of the union? Like, who actually hires?
I'm the hiring officer. Okay.
All right. Can you reread that, please?
Yep. It may make recommendations regarding union administrative personnel to the Director of the Union.
Second. Okay, so this is for Article 5, for Executive Board, Section 8. Shoshana has proposed striking Section 8 and putting in that language. Is there any other comments? Otherwise, we're going to move to vote. All those in favor for that language? All those opposed? Okay, it's in. Back to the main queue for union constitution and discussion. Any comments? Frank, do you have any other? Also, can someone pass me the attendance, the other half of it?
So I didn't change this when it came out of committee because I overlooked it. But right now in Article 12, succession, the thing that was removed, Article 10, Section 3 has been removed. And what that does is there was a thing in the old Constitution that it was, if any position was filled by appointment, that students, 20% of students in a constituency could petition that that position be filled by special election. And that was removed. The reason being that the requirements to petition, if it's filled by appointment, then to petition that it be a special election to fill that position, those requirements are the exact same for a recall in the removal section. So effectively, it's the same thing. If people don't like someone in a position, they can switch them out, and the requirements are the same. So that's why that was removed, but I wanted to note that because it was just something I had overlooked in the committee.
Comments regarding that or the whole document without the Greek representation issue? All right. there's no other comments, we'll move to vote on the whole Union Constitution without the Greek representation issue that Greg's motion proposed. All those in favor? We have to pass it.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Now, that vote doesn't approve the whole, we're gonna have to vote in the end on the whole thing. That's just a vote that we agree basically on everything discussed. Okay? So now the discussion is open to the entire Union Constitution, including the voting rights specified in the Senate.
Point of clarification, I think. I thought when you divide a question, you have each considered separately. So, I'm
I'll look it up.
confused here, but
Yes.
I thought.
No, yes, you're correct.
So we are only considering Article 4, Section 3.
Oh,
I
you're
have a
correct.
question.
I apologize for that.
So we can decide on it separately, but I think when it goes to the student body, is it just one?
It is just one.
It'll,
I guess that's true.
yeah.
Are we starting?
Yes.
So I would like to move to amend the following language in Article 4, Section 3. Currently referring to independent and Greek senators, it reads, 2 members from the Independent Council, 1 member from PANHAL, and 1 member from IFC. I would like to change this to 2 independent members, 1 member appointed by PANHAL and 1 member appointed by IFC. This would do 2 things. 1, it recognizes that the Independent Council has dissolved and still provides 2 independent seats. And 2, it gives full control under all circumstances to IFC and PANHAL as to how their senators are elected.
Seconded.
Who did? Okay.
James.
All right. We're now discussing that particular motion.
Can you restate it?
Yeah.
So, Article 4, Section 3, the phrases regarding independent and Greeks would now read 2 independent members, 1 member appointed by PANHAL and 1 member appointed by IFC.
Greg?
Okay, so my opinion on this matter is that if independent council members are to be directly elected, then so must Greek and so much to Greek senators. I believe that is more democratic, and I believe it would serve to mitigate a lot of the problems we've had in the past with Greek senators. With regards to perhaps not knowing exactly what their duties would entail. I believe that a rules and election info session, going through all that, would, well, enrich the Senate and those positions in a lot of ways.
Lisa? I would, in follow-up to Greg, I would like to also point out that because we are constituted separately from the union, even it says appointed by Panhellenic Council and IFC Council. What I said earlier still stands true. If we are going to definitely think about amending, if not actually amend, to make it so that the both seats are elected separately, like during GM week, by the Greek affiliates. Did I just like really confuse everyone? Did I make any sense? I feel like that was like a
Well, that
weird
makes sense.
sentence. So that's just like, that would be what it says, but we would still have the ability to put it to an election during GM week in the same way that independent council has.
Paul?
What?
You're on the queue. I knew someone would be confused.
Paul's on the cue.
No, I wasn't.
Paul is not on the queue. Frank?
I would caution against including language in here that would force the Greek senators to be directly elected because assuming that the language would be relatively the same as how it stands, I think it's important that we allow IFC and PANHAL to self-determine, and I think allowing them to choose the method by which they select their representative to the Senate is key to that.
Kyle?
Frank covered it perfectly.
Paul?
Yeah, I agree with what Frank just said, and also that sort of this motion, it will ensure the equality and balance that everybody had sort of been looking for as their main concern with retaining the Greek senators, because it will ensure that there are the 2 reserved independent seats and the 2 reserved Greek seats, which will be selected by the independents and the Greeks. And, well, we can't really put anything in the constitutions ordering the IFC and PANHAL to do anything, as they're bodies that aren't under the union and they have the right to choose how they select their representatives.
Tina?
I was just gonna make a suggestion to Kyle, to do kind of your suggestion in two parts. So right now, just change the wording from independent council to independent members, and then vote on the other part of it in a separate one.
Wait, is that a question?
It was a
Recommendation.
suggestion, recommendation, whatever, to your motion.
I'm okay with that, yeah.
So are you rescinding your motion?
He's amending.
Are you amending your own
I'm
motion?
amending my motion to not yet change the Pan-Hel IFC to not yet change the Pan-Hel and IFC wording, change independent council to independent. We can discuss the other stuff after this is amended.
Okay, so just the independent wording change. Comments on that? Otherwise, we'll just move to vote on it.
Michael?
Yes.
Okay, so now it would read 2 independent members, 1 member from the Pan-Hellenic Council and 1 member from the Interfraternity Council.
So we're just changing the independent language.
Getting that out of the way, so to speak.
Michael?
So last week at the open forum, we discussed the issue of removing the independent votes and what effects that would have on Greek votes. So is the independent vote not going, or are we at a point where we don't want the independent vote to go away then? I was asking Frank.
Speaking from the perspective of independent counsel, I think that dissolving the council well within the council's rights, but making a determination on whether or not it's necessary for independents to be represented in the Senate, I don't think the council in its current state is adequately able to answer that question. So that's why we didn't recommend anything further regarding the senators. We basically passed the buck to the Senate on the question.
Chase?
I was gonna talk about the Greek senators.
Okay, raise your hand later. Greg?
Pass.
Okay, QMD? Oh,
I
yes.
can just bring up a little point that I thought of. With those independent senators, with coterminal students who are in their degree, for example, myself, if I vote for 2014, would I be able to then vote for those senators? I'm just kind of curious.
Question for Frank.
And that might affect people's decisions.
That would completely depend upon the requirements that the Senate sets for those seats in the GMWeek handbook.
Much for voting on it. Other comments? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All those in favor?
Can you reread?
Reread it?
Sure.
Yeah. No, I've already called it. It has to go through.
That, I thought you could.
So he can still vote.
Alright.
Right now, the thing that it reads would be, the change would be from 2 members from the independent council to 2 independent members.
And that's it?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, that's changed.
Tina?
I would like to motion to strike 2 independent members, 1 member from the Panhellenic Council and 1 member from the Interfraternal Council.
Can you repeat that?
I would like to strike everything after the word undergraduate classes.
Okay, is there a second for that motion?
I think it needs to be discussed, so.
Second.
Nope. You can have it.
All right, that's been seconded. So the motion is to remove everything after undergraduate classes. So to remove 2 independent senators, or the 2 independent members, and 1 member from the IFC and 1 from the Pan-Hel.
Lisa?
I really don't see the point in narrowing the scope over which Senate represents the student body. I feel as if it's unnecessary to remove more senators. We should really be in the process of trying to better represent the student body. And I think removing all 4 Senate seats is a really poor choice and reflects poorly on the Senate.
Also, before we go to the next person, I'm not going to make a point. I just hope everyone read the minutes I sent out for the Greek forum. Waited to make sure those were updated. They're also being passed around, so if you didn't get a chance to, please look at them. I don't want to, obviously things are going to repeat, I can't stop that, but try and make sure that everything is still kind of relevant and we're progressing with our comments. So with that, sorry, Greg?
Yeah. I'm of the opinion that either all 4 of these positions must exist or none of them. And in light of the many arguments we've heard over the past few months, I'm of the personal opinion that there's no real problems with having all 4, as long as all 4 are directly elected.
Kyle?
Just to kind of expand on what Greg and Lisa said, I'm going to say the same point that I said in the forum last week, that these positions are not something we're looking to add. They're status quo. They've existed for an extremely long time, and they've been legitimized by their continued existence and by their relevance in certain discussions. There's no harm with them. They haven't caused us any voting imbalance or concern, and by removing them now, we would alienate a large population, we would disrupt that working status quo, and as Lisa said, make the Senate more exclusive. So we should leave all 4 in.
Paul?
I believe that sort of one of the things is the reason we have different senators in the Senate who represent all of the different classes are because people from different classes, different demographics, different areas are able to represent the areas of the student body they come from the best. And there are unique issues to independent students and Greek students on campus, and I feel it's necessary to retain these positions to make sure that those issues, if they and when they arise, as does happen from time to time, are addressed. Because simply at a time, it wouldn't be appropriate for the Senate to make a mistake in a rule or something that we pass due to lack of information or negligence.
I'm on the queue. I believe that there was a question in the forum of if there was no Greek or independent senators, they wouldn't have a voice. I think that I want to mention the point that if those positions didn't exist, the responsibility of representing those students would still fall to the class representatives, the class senators. So like myself, for example, I will of course only speak for myself, but I think that I should have that responsibility that if the change was made, the senators should be able to handle that responsibility. They should be able to be qualified enough to go to these councils and still represent the students. Even if we didn't have the positions, I think that doesn't mean we wouldn't have someone who would hear people. I come to these Senate meetings every week, and every visitor who wants to speak gets a voice. If someone comes to me and has an idea, I send it to the right people. Specifically on the Union Constitution, I got a number of proposed solutions for the issue. I sent every single one of them to Frank and to Chuck. They read them over. We discussed them a little bit. Whether it was my idea or not, it still came before the Senate. So ideas don't get lost just because you don't have a senator. That's just another side I wanted to talk about. That doesn't mean I'm for or against removing the positions. I just want general people, perhaps in the poly, to know that everyone does get a voice. Just because you're not a senator doesn't mean you don't get a voice. Chase.
I think I would be in support of keeping the positions as long as they were directly elected by Greek students. So with that, I would like to make a motion to change it to, or should I do that later? Okay, never mind.
Jessica. Frank.
I guess if some of the points I've heard from the forum, as well as now, if I'm encapsulating those correctly, I think what you brought up, Shoshana, is a good point, but I think within that is the fact that you're a good senator, and so you do those things, you make sure that you represent all of your constituency, but we can't always guarantee that that's going to be the case for independents and for Greeks. So I think maybe that is some of the reasoning behind having specifically designated representatives.
Kyle.
Kind of with what Frank said, again, I just want to reinforce that we're not looking at adding new positions right now. These positions have been around. We're looking at taking them away. And I still don't see any harm in continuing the status quo. So I don't think they should be removed. I don't think we should remove 4 voices from the Senate.
Jessica.
I guess the one thing that I was just gonna say is kind of plays off what Kyle, Paul, and Frank all said. These positions kind of are the voice of two sections of student body that equals 100%. There's always the possibility that from year to year the Senate fluctuates from all four senators of a given class, or all senators in general being of independent affiliation or of Greek affiliation. So to have two standard voices from independent and Greek represents the 100% while keeping all voices heard regardless of the fluctuation of representative within each class.
Michael?
Kyle, you mentioned earlier that this like form of like representation has been in the Senate for a while, or for many years. Do you know how many years and how long it's been since it was changed? And how are they represented in the past? Or Frank Warford?
I believe at least since 1987, as far as I can tell.
I can answer that. Whatever. I've been looking through old poly records. Sometime between 1970, when the union was formed, and the student senate and the executive board took the form that we know today, and 1975. Sometime between those two years, these positions were formed. I cannot find anything from old polys that explicitly says how and why, but it's early 1970s.
Okay, so just to add a little to the two clarifications that were made, as for how they existed in the past, until last year we had an interesting scenario where there was one independent senator and two representatives one from IFC, one from PanHel. The Senate seat and the vote would switch between them between semesters. So rather than create a situation where half of the Greek community doesn't have a voice in a given, just if a motion comes up in a given semester, we decided we would give both of them Senate seats and create a second independent spot to preserve this balance that's been discussed.
I'm on the queue. Would the visitors like to speak? And now Paul's on the queue.
Well, I guess Tyler, you don't have anything to say.
I will probably say something when I have something that I think will be beneficial for the Senate, and we'll try not to repeat anything that's been said before, so I'll raise my hand when I want to get to you. Thank you.
With what Kyle said, sort of, I think just based off that feedback alone gotten from last year with the constitutional amendments, if last year the student body voted to increase the independent and Greek representation on the Senate, it doesn't really make sense to present them with an option to completely remove something they just voted to increase, unless there's been some late change and everybody's really, really mad.
Clinton?
I mean, I'm still a little confused on the question of the representation that would be lost, because if you're Greek, you'd still have your class senator, and couldn't your class senator also be affiliated with a fraternity or sorority?
Yes.
So we could have an entire group of class senators that are Greek, and they would also be able to represent their class as well as Greek interests.
Anthony?
As Kyle mentioned, these four senators have been here for a long time, or in some way, shape, or form. I think given the discussion that the Constitution Committee has had, the J-Board chairman, I was also in that committee, the progress that we made on the Constitution should not be forfeit just on this one issue. I don't think you should alienate a group of students just by removing four voices that add to the Senate. So it's just something to consider, that are you willing to go this new and improved Constitution just for this one issue?
I just want to say, kind of to the, if I want to say something, my voice kind of comes through Lisa. So I shouldn't have to come here and say it. I mean, I am, because I am very involved in this issue, but you guys should know how the PanHel Council feels through the PanHel Council seat in the Senate.
Lisa?
So I guess, Clinton, to sort of answer your question, is that part of what the Greek senator does too is makes it so that being Greek isn't really an issue in the elections process. Because let's say a scenario existed where the Greek senator was removed, then that could make, being a member of a Greek organization part of your qualifications to get elected, because the Greek community would like to continue to remain represented, and if we would have to do that through the democratic process, we probably would have to do that. And that would be something that'd be pretty unfortunate, because there's a lot of passionate and qualified independent people who could possibly lose their seats if that were to become an issue. And I don't want that to happen.
Lisa? Also, I would also like to answer Clinton's question and respond. Basically, there's nothing stopping any Greek from running for any Senate position, just as there's nothing stopping any independent person running for any Senate position, other than, of course, Panhellenic and IFC and vice versa. However, I would hope that my class of 2015 senators would represent the class of 2015, of which I believe it's 12% are Greek. So if an issue came up that largely affected Greek life, but for some reason my class of 2015, the 88% that's independent wanted it one way, and it really largely affected the Greek population, we wouldn't be heard because they would be representing their constituents by the majority, which is what they should do. So the benefit to having a Greek senator and an independent senator to balance each other out is that if an issue does come up that largely affects Greek life, your voice won't be lost by the majority. And that, like, even if, let's say or Greg, or who's the current class 2015 senator, if he was Greek, I would really hope he wouldn't let his Greek status get in the way of what is best for his class. Whereas, as a Greek representing my Greek community, that's all I'm representing. I'm representing just the Greek agenda, which, as independent, would be just representing the independent agenda.
Jessica?
I guess that's basically almost exactly what I was going to say. Your 4 class senators represent your class, then as a whole, those 4 class years plus graduate represent 100% of the student body, but they focus on their class year. In addition to that, there would be the 2 independent and the 2 Greek who would represent their communities as a whole, which would also equal 100%. So having those 2 things separate kind of covers all areas of where problems may arise and where issues can be brought to the Senate and actually have more of a voice than just one individual coming forward.
Greg?
Okay, to Anthony's point that he doesn't want to see all this good work that's been done on the Constitution forfeited just because of this one issue. I agree. However, I don't think that has to happen, and I would like to explore the possibility, is there any rule against having such a,
Making a conditional ballot.
Yeah, exactly. Making a conditional ballot in which the student body would vote on everything except this one, the same way we are now, and then voting on Article 4, Section 3 separately. Does anyone know of any rule that would disallow that?
Tyler?
As Jess kind of alluded to, your name's Jess, right? Okay. The Greek and independent Senate seats, they kind of act as a check and balance, because those 4 seats add up to 100% of the student body, of the undergraduate student body. So I guess it's not completely 100%. But the rest of the Senate seats, the class Senates, they represent each class broken up, and they represent their constituents. So everyone is trying to be represented, but you just sort of represent independents and Greeks again, and that kind of adds up to all 100% again. Just sort of to make sure that everyone's voice is heard, and to make sure that all issues that need to be covered are actually covered. I think removing these 4 seats would very much so reduce the checks and balances that the Senate has. So I think we really should keep these 4 seats.
Is there any new discussion? Otherwise, the queue is empty.
For what it's worth, I'll say I found the conversation interesting, and I want to preface it by saying I'm not inserting my opinion, because it's your all's constitution, so it needs to be what it is. But what I will say is usually a student government would end up feeling the need to have a constituency-based representative, so that to make sure that there are unheard voices at the table. So you could end up making the argument to say, in the undergraduate population, our international student population is a single-digit percentage, but a student senate would say that, well, at the graduate level, it's half. At the undergraduate, it's single-digit percentage. I think the freshman class was about 10%, but all the ones before it were less. But they would end up saying that is an important constituency and want to make sure that their voices are heard, and say for that reason there would be a representative from that population. So.
Can I make a motion to add that? Have a representative from an international group?
Currently, we're discussing mine, so.
We're just discussing this motion, however, you can do that once we vote upon that.
Okay.
You can amend it.
I guess like, it just goes along with the rationale of the argument that we're making. Like, if you're talking about the 12%, 88%, if another group was, say, 10%, or another somewhat percentage in between that number, why shouldn't that group be represented the same way that the Greeks will be represented?
Anthony.
This was brought up in Constitution Committee before we threw it to a subcommittee before and I think just given the unique relationship that the Greeks had with us on campus, that housing decisions directly affect them. It's a large portion of the population, so given that unique situation that we have with them, I think it's worth it to have these four voices in there, while not necessarily making a lobbyist vote for every single possible minority that might exist on campus.
Erica?
I think that where that line could be drawn is, are you a self-governing body? Sororities and fraternities are self-governing bodies, independent council is a self-governing body. So, well, I mean, it was.
Kyle?
I agree with that, but I also think where the line could be drawn is, again, that these positions already exist. It's not like we're taking steps to add representation for certain minorities, where if anything, with Tina's amendment, if anything, we're considering removing them. So the line can be drawn that we're not trying to start a trend of representing any group that seeks it. We're simply considering whether the status quo should be maintained, and as Frank said, it's been maintained at least since the 80s.
Michael?
So I think removing does threaten the voice of Pan-Hellenic IC. However, I also think it is the responsibility of Pan-Hellenic IC to maintain their voices. So if these voices were to be removed, I think it would be your responsibility and not the Senate's to make sure that their voices are heard. However, I think changing what we have already right now would be problematic, just because it would kind of undermine the idea of what everyone else is saying, like the balance of the Senate.
Other comments? Seeing none, we'll move to vote.
Motion for roll call vote.
So wait, just clarifying, we're voting on the amendment to remove Greek and independent centers.
Right, so I will read the language as the proposed amendment would have it. The Senate shall Article 4, Section 3, the Senate shall consist of 20, well, actually, we didn't amend the first part.
We'll worry about that later.
But we'll worry about that later. So what it would read is the Senate shall consist of 26 voting members, 6 members from the graduate class, 4 members from each of the senior, junior, sophomore, and freshman undergraduate classes.
Frank, you can finally make it 24.
Okay, I'll do that.
No, wait, 22.
Also, can I insert "and" in between the one part?
Just add.
So just to clarify, you'd be voting yes in favor of the amendment and no opposed to the amendment?
Yes. Yeah, you'd be voting yes to remove the Senate positions, no to keep them.
All right, so
No, if you want Greek senators in place.
buckle up, everyone. We're doing this again.
Does everyone understand how roll call works?
Put it away. Put it away. Put it away.
Hold on, guys.
Listen up.
Quiet.
I passed NOC afterwards.
Yes.
Yes. So, the first round, the first time I go through the list, which is in no order in particular, you can vote yes, no, or pass. And the second round, if you pass, your name will come up again, and you can vote yes, no, or abstain. So, without further ado, we'll get to it. Lisa,
No.
James,
No.
Tim,
No.
Claire,
No.
Kristen,
No.
Mike. Oh yeah, that's
Pass.
Peter,
Pass.
Jess, Joe, Paul,
No.
Melanie,
No.
Donna, Marcus,
No.
Michael Hahn,
No.
Shoshana,
Pass.
Tina,
Yes.
Greg,
No.
Kyle,
No.
Max,
Nope.
Chase,
No.
That's one no.
Ernesto,
Pass.
Quentin,
Yes.
okay. Just go back. Mike,
Abstain.
Peter,
No.
Shoshana,
I abstain.
Do we get it? Ernesto.
oh, yeah, sorry, Ernesto.
Abstain. Okay, motion fails. Thank you. So now, again, we have the whole Union Constitution.
No.
No, we don't.
We
I'm
have
sorry.
the Greek issue.
Yeah, the Greek issue, I'm sorry. There's so many layers.
Oh, I have layers.
So just the Greek issue. So now we have 2 independent members, and then 1 member from the Panhandle Council and 1 member from the Fraternity Council.
Silent.
So I would like to reintroduce the rewording I put on the table before. 1 member appointed by Panhandle, 1 member appointed by IFC, rather than from.
Is there a
Again-
second for that motion?
Again, this is to give them full control of the means by which this member is elected. They could do a motion for direct election. If they feel the need to change that, they have control of that process.
Great.
I'd like to reiterate my point from before. I think that this language is necessary for self-determination, and in anticipation of what other motions might happen, I would again caution us to stay away from requiring them being directly elected.
Great.
I say it's fine that it doesn't, in this specific section, it doesn't enumerate that they must be directly, oh, okay. Okay. I see what you're saying, I'm sorry. I have to more or less disagree with Frank. I believe that, once again, forcing, well, not forcing, but having it so that the Greek senators are directly elected the same way the independent council senators must be, or may be, depending on changes that we approve. It will enrich the positions and it will make it more democratic. Every senator is held to a specific standard, and part of that standard is being able to win over all of its constituency. I know there is a somewhat democratic process in IFC and Panhandle, but I feel much more comfortable with direct election. I believe it's more democratic and more transparent.
I'm on the queue. I believe that if we have Greek senators, which at this point we do, I would recommend direct election only because of what I see the problem with the senator is. We haven't always had Lisa. We haven't always had someone who didn't come in knowing what they had to do, but took it up anyway. I haven't been on the Senate for an extraordinary number of years because I don't plan to be here for half a decade. But I do know that the position hasn't always been filled by someone who understands that you have to sit in these really long meetings where we spend lots of time discussing things. You have to sit on at least 2 committees, and those committees have work outside of their actual committee meetings. It's a job, and I think that having a direct election would at least let those representatives know what that job is. Next on the queue is Frank.
Out of the room
Next
is
on the
Frank.
queue is Chase.
As I said before, I think it should be direct election. If we want it to be direct election, I think we should stipulate that. And Frank just left. I was going to ask him because he mentioned that there were issues with forcing it to be a direct election. And I was just wondering what those issues were.
Michael?
So I wanted to, I just wanted to say, I think direct elections might not be the best way just because by saying that they don't know what they're getting themselves into or they might not be devoted, I think that in itself would cause they're responsible for their own voice, so why not let them make their own decision? If they choose a bad senator, that's their fault and they don't get their voice then. And it's up to them to choose the right person to be a senator. Also, I think making it democratic elections will make it fair. I agree, but also the independents have kind of renounced their right to choose their own representative, just because the IC has dissolved itself and the IC and Panhandle hasn't dissolved itself. So why make it? Why force them to have democratic elections?
Is that your question or?
No,
He was just posing.
I didn't mean to make it a question.
Erica?
In response to you, Shoshana, have there not been senators who have been directly elected by the constituency who have not known the time commitments and have not? So is that actually an appointment versus direct election, or is that just who gets chosen?
I agree that there certainly have been examples where a senator has gone in and not known what they were doing. I'll give an example. Last year, 2016, guy got elected. He kind of just disappeared off the face of the earth. But there was a process where the 2016 would elect someone new, and they use that process. Because you're constituted separately, you define your own process, so there's not a guarantee of that spot being filled, where there is a process specified for class senator. That's the only reason I bring it up.
I mean, we could add something like...
That would be up to your bodies.
Yeah.
We're just talking about our bodies.
Okay.
Okay, Kyle.
I'm not necessarily against the idea of direct elections. I'm just against spelling them out in here. If we spell out that Panhandle and IFC have to appoint their members elect their members directly in this constitution, they have no real jurisdiction over that. And I think it's better to give to vie on their side in terms of flexibility and give IFC and Panhandle themselves the means to look at their current situation and decide whether they need an appointed senator, one that's guaranteed to represent their community, or whether they want an elected senator across the Greek community.
Paul?
Yeah, sort of just because I've been talking with Frank about this issue earlier, that had been sort of Frank's sticking point about why we can't really, because the IFC and Panhandle aren't set up or under the jurisdiction of the union, and the union constitution can't really order or dictate to them that they have to choose their representatives or their senators in a certain way. So while I feel we should formally request that they set up their elections so that they're voted on by all of the people who are members of organizations under IFC and Panhandle, I believe we should try to dictate to them to do things we can't make them do.
Tyler?
So currently, the way that we appoint a Greek senator, at least for IFC, I cannot speak entirely for Eric. I'm not sure about their inner workings. But it's an interview process. we basically look, so the three kind of criteria, or couple criteria we have is interest in student senate. That way they know kind of what they're getting into. We know that they want to be there. The second one is usually we have some sort of brother, one of their brothers basically say and speak on their behalf, like to me basically. Yes, this person does their brotherly duties. They are responsible. They do their work. What kind of positions they held in their brotherhood? What kind of stuff? It's kind of like applying for a job. It is a job. We know it's a job. I've said this many times before. I'm sorry about the previous Greek senator for IFC. We were not able to really remedy that. We didn't really know much about it, and I was recently here, so we fixed it as fast as we could. But the way that we're kind of putting it into words, how the appointment process goes. And I mean, this semester we had 3 people that were very interested in the Senate come for the interviews, and all 3 were very qualified, and we feel we chose the best one, so. Yeah.
Joe?
I want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly. So Greeks would have the ability, students who are Greek would have the ability to be able to vote on the independent reps, but independent students wouldn't?
No.
Okay, sorry. Thanks for clarification.
Lisa?
I would just like to add, we are constituted separately from the union. If we do decide to have our vote go to a direct election, it would be our decision and ours alone. It's not going to fall under the Rensselaer Union Constitution, as we have our own government, our own constitution separate. So that being said, I feel like it'd be inappropriate or crossing a boundary to formally word it as needing direct election in the Rensselaer Union Constitution. If we did decide that we wanted to have our, senators being voted on during GM week in a direct election, that would be our decision. It would be in our constitution, not the union's constitution.
Jesse?
Alright, so it comes across to me at least that by defining that it has to be a direct election through the Senate's use of power, you're essentially stating that you feel you're more qualified to decide on how to appoint senators that represent our constituencies than our respective governing bodies of the IFC and the Panhellenic Council. And I feel like, while I agree with many of you that I think a direct election would be a good system, I think it should be something that is left up to our respective councils to decide, and not something that is forced upon us by the Senate.
Right.
Okay. First response to that point, absolutely not. I do not believe that we are more qualified to tell you how to run your internal affairs. The thing is, when you send a senator, that suddenly becomes our internal affairs. So that's something can also, even if we say direct election, that wouldn't be saying that we as a Senate think that we can speak for you. That means we think the student body in general can make a more democratic decision as opposed to that point. That is what I'm saying. And I guess the main problem with the motion I have right now is that it more or less says it has to be appointed by the very same logic that some people are saying it has to be appointed, the Senate cannot tell them what to do, then he cannot tell you guys that they absolutely have to be appointed. So I guess that saying it must be appointed limits the scope of the IFC panel in the same way that specifically enumerate that direct election would.
By outlining that these members are appointed by IFC and Panhell, that they can still determine the method of appointment, and that method can include a direct election. We're not limiting it to, say, a vote within the council.
Frank?
He said I go.
Queue is empty.
Kyle, can you reread the language?
So those sentences in section 3 will read 2 independent members, 1 member appointed by the Panhellenic Council, and 1 member appointed by the Interfraternity Council.
Is there any other comments regarding this motion? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. Oh, I'm sorry, Jason.
the Greek senators would be voting, in addition to Greek issues, which they'd be well qualified to vote on, also they would be voting members for every discussion that comes up at Senate. And so I just feel better if they were elected at least by the Greek community as opposed to being appointed by, an outside organization.
Jacob?
Point of information, actually, I don't even need to go on cue for that, but the Greek senator appointments are actually approved by a vote of all of the IFC representatives. So every Greek already has a voice in this through their elected representatives that their house do. So if you, an individual, had a problem with a particular person up for review, you could address that with your representative and your house could vote a different way.
Lisa? I would also like to again point out that this legislation isn't saying that the current process by which Greek senators are decided is going to maintain place. This is just saying that it is up to the discretion of the Panhellenic Constitution and the Interfraternity Council Constitution to decide how the senators are appointed, and that jurisdiction is being taken over by the Rensselaer Union. So we're not saying yes or no to a direct election, we're just saying that it's still going to be determined by our constitutions. Dan?
To the Panhandle Senator, what's the official name of your organization?
My,
Panhandle.
Panhellenic Council?
Okay, because on your website it says the Panhellenic Association.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We are the Rensselaer Panhellenic Association.
Thank you.
No problem.
My bad.
I request that the motion and the entire Constitution reflects that.
Motion to amend that to be the right name, then.
Wait, why don't we do that after we vote on this?
That's fine too, okay.
Yeah, just
Queue is empty. Claire?
Can you read the wording of that?
Okay, so this will now read 2 independent members, 1 member appointed by the Panhellenic Council and 1 member appointed by the Interfraternity Council.
Can't you just change it now to Panhellenic Association?
You gotta change the entire Constitution, it's all over the place.
It's only been.
Oh, it's only mentioned there? Yep.
Well, it's your motion, Kyle.
I'll say friendly, yeah.
So because we made a change and this is an important issue, could you please reread?
All right.
I had to read the IC thing 3 times.
2 independent members, 1 member appointed by the Panhellenic Association and 1 member appointed by the Interfraternity Council. Okay, the Rensselaer Panhellenic Association.
Right.
On that point, what's the actual name of IFC? Also, is interfraternity hyphenated and then capitalized?
Interfraternity Council, technically there's no hyphen, but it's pretty unclear.
Interfraternity is one word by the Poli-Style Guide, and one word by their official. Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments? I think we covered a wide
Yeah.
spectrum of issues.
So we added the word Rensselaer before Panhell,
Yeah.
And delete the
but
word
not
council
before
and
IFC.
It's different.
The official name of
Okay, so it's
Panhellenic.
not consistent.
All right. We're voting now. All those in favor of those changes? Yes? All those opposed? Okay. So that's in.
Okay,
Yeah,
so,
it does.
because technically Kyle motioned within the Greek issue, we're still in the Greek issue. Can we motion to get out of the Greek issue and go up?
Wait, when we go up, will we be able to talk about the whole Constitution?
Yes.
Yes, that is the one after that.
Cool.
So what are we on right now?
We're in the queue about the Greek
Article 4,
issue.
Section 3.
Okay, so just
We're
section.
talking about it, so we're technically still in the Greek issue.
All right, so Frank is going to read the section as it is now, which is what we're currently discussing because that was what was motioned.
Okay, so Article 4, Section 3 now reads, the Senate shall consist of 26 voting members, 6 members from the graduate class, 4 members from each of the senior, junior, sophomore, and freshman undergraduate classes, 2 independent members, 1 member appointed by the Rensselaer Panhellenic Association, and 1 member appointed by the Interfraternity Council.
All right.
Just sort of a point of order. Would this be the appropriate, since the change arose out of this Greek question subcategory thing, would this be an appropriate time to motion to have when and where the independent senators are voted on changed?
We can't because of the division of the question, we can only discuss stuff specific to this section.
Okay.
Comments about this section?
Gina is on the queue first. Do you want to be off of the queue?
Why don't we?
Kyle is on the queue. Does he want to be off the queue?
No.
Let's clear
Tyler?
Yeah.
Well, now it's fine.
When I say no, I mean
Tyler,
yes.
do you want to
take
be
it
on
off
the queue?
Yes. Just, I want to say thanks for, I need to leave right now, but thank you guys for listening and being here and holding all this stuff. And doing, especially holding that last week Greek forum for us. Really appreciate it. It was, I'm sorry it got really hostile. I didn't really want that, but I think it was kind of inevitable. So I like just thank you guys for
That's who was in.
Okay. Other comments? We've basically thoroughly discussed many of the different scenarios that could be the outcome of this constitution for this section. Any new points to this? So just this section 3, which Frank read out loud. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay. So now, if I'm not mistaken, we're on the whole Union Constitution.
Yes, we are.
Well, kind of.
Wait, do we have to
We just approved one part and the other parts. I think we should.
No, we didn't actually approve both parts. We approved the Greek part.
When you divided the question, it's now two completely separate things.
We approved the Greek part.
And we approved
Can we make a motion to combine the two parts and approve them as one thing?
We are venturing into legislative limbo.
Okay.
Yeah, but now it's two separate or something.
Point of order.
No.
There's no, the only way to do it would be to rescind the division of the question.
Okay, so
Which you should do.
So we should
I thought the whole thing has been approved on the basis of the fact that.
Well,
No.
do I have to be on the queue?
Yeah, you do.
Middle of topic, but- Okay, I was under the impression, I'm sorry, I was under the impression that when you divide the motion and you approve each part separately, and that is the end of it. Is that correct?
According to Robert.
I don't know.
That's correct. Okay, so we've technically approved the Constitution, as I understand.
Yeah, technically.
Good job, everyone.
No, wait.
Guys.
If people didn't understand that, then we didn't do it correctly. Because I don't, as it seems to me, people did not understand that that was what was going on.
I can say there's one last
So, okay, for the sake of clarity, I rescind the motion and recombine
So it's the whole
two
thing.
things,
Okay.
so that we may vote on it as a whole.
Yeah.
I think right now there's one minor thing which may need to be addressed, which is.
Can we get out of queue?
Where is it here? Okay. Sorry.
Greg is first on the queue. Does Greg want to be on the queue?
Well, technically the queue resets because he rescinded it.
Yeah, I'm resetting.
Oh, okay.
I already said it.
Okay, Tina. Kyle.
Okay, so one final amendment to be made. In Article 9 Elections, Section 1, simply add the words "and the independent senators" after the list of senators for each class year. And I'd like to add a new Section 4 after Section 3, simply saying, "In order to be eligible for the office of independent senator, a student must not be a member of a social fraternity or sorority. Fraternal affiliation will be determined by the Dean of Students' Office." So this is to make independent senators directly elected officially by the Constitution and to determine what qualifies as independent.
Can you go through those once more?
Okay.
What article?
It should say social, there, I feel like that's getting very wordy.
I think, I may be wrong, but I believe service fraternities and sororities don't qualify as independent.
Technically, there
don't qualify as
are a
Greek.
whole bunch of different distinctions.
Let's stop the back and forth. However, I'm going to take over the queue and give it to you. Yes.
Oh, okay. Social implies that professional sororities and fraternities are not in there. Professional sororities and fraternities do have a place here at RPI on Panhandle and IFC because we do not have a separate council for them. So.
Back to normal queue. Chuck, back
What?
to normal queue.
Yes, back to normal.
Michael,
This. What?
Paul. Just wait. Right now, are we debating Kyle's amendments and what
Yes.
the heck is Kyle's?
So I'll reread my amendment. Section 1 in elections will now read, the general elections of the GM, the PU, the officers and representatives of each of the classes, the senators for each of the classes, and the independent senators will be held each year during the spring semester at a time and place determined by the Senate. And I'd be adding a new section after Section 3 saying, in order to be eligible for the office of independent senator, a student must not be a member of a social fraternity or sorority. Social was in there because I was told that you are still considered independent if you're a member of a professional sorority or fraternity. If that's not true, we could easily friendly that out.
I would.
Panhandle or an IFC recognized.
Yeah, I would say just to be
Wide as possible.
clear.
Why don't we just say it's determined by the Dean of Students?
Yeah.
So we could
Yeah.
just say independent status determined by Dean of Students?
Yeah.
I'll make that friendly, yeah.
Is the motion itself, Chase, you can go quickly, is the motion itself friendly to the Union Constitution? Meaning, are we voting on it?
It's friendly.
Okay.
So, how would this be worded? Yeah, in order to be eligible for the office of independent, or maybe eligibility for the office of independent senator will be determined by the Dean of Students office? Yeah. Okay.
You can still discuss it, it's just that it's in right now.
So,
Paul,
so essentially, or Kyle, just to clarify, that stipulates that the independent senators will be voted on at the same time as all the other GM League Senate.
Yes.
Other comments?
Just out of curiosity, if IFC and Panhandle did decide to do a direct election, what would would they be able to get that in with the GM week election?
Yes. My sources have told me.
Already chair says yes.
Okay. Other comments regarding this wonderful discussion about the Union Constitution? Nothing?
Did you want to go back in and change Panhandle to Rensselaer Panhandle Association in the places that it was?
Motion to change.
It's only in that one place.
Oh, it's only in that one place?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure.
If it is, it's an incidental change, we can just correct it in the other places.
Okay.
So should I reread this amendment?
Yeah.
Okay, so the way this reads now, the general election of the GM, the PU, the officers and reps of each class, the senators for each class, and the independent senators shall be held concurrently each year during the spring semester in a time and place determined by the Senate. And there's a new section 4 reading, eligibility for the office of independent senator will be determined by the Dean of Students office. Well, that's friendly.
Okay.
There's better wording for the section 4.
The concept is the same.
Yes.
Any other comments? Otherwise, we're going to move to vote on the Union Constitution.
It's friendly. JK roll.
All right, pay attention. Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All those in favor? Keep them up. All those opposed? Okay, this motion passes 22-0. We have something else that we need to talk about now. However, we've gotten through most of the storm.
I worked hard on this, guys.
That's not in our bylaws, I'm sorry. All motion to recess.
Seconded, yeah, you're fine. Okay.
All motion to recess.
To recess?
Yeah.
I do not second.
James second.
Is there a second?
The whole Band-Aid, let's do it.
How long?
Let's go. Like 5 minutes.
I haven't heard a second. Did someone second?
I did second.
You did?
Paul, how long?
Like 5 minutes.
Let's vote on
5 minutes, actually? Okay.
It's
been.
All those in favor of the recess?
For 5 minutes.
For 5 minutes, raise your hand. Yeah, no recess, sorry. All right, the third motion. The Rensselaer Union 44th Student Senate approves the 2014 GM Week Handbook as prepared and approved by the Rules and Elections Committee effective immediately. So moved by Tim and from second from committee. Oh, from committee, so it's set. All right. Open to discussion.
I'm first on the queue, so independent counsel is removed? Yes, no?
I'll get to that.
Actually, that's a good point. Before we get to anything, I think Tim has some prepared statements about the handbook.
Yeah, okay, so currently as the 2014 handbook stands, the changes are, 1, I have added an informational video as an alternative to the informational session, but we will get to that. Number 2, candidates are required to do either the video or the informational session before you campaign. 3, all mentions of independent counsel and undergraduate counsel have been eliminated. The cap on the word count for party platforms has been eliminated. The chalk rule that bans chalk in the CII has now been extended to all of campus, so there's no chalk at all. And finally, the rule that bans animals in campaigning has been reworded to say live animals.
What was the previous rule?
That gives me an idea.
There is a queue. And Greg is on the queue.
Okay. If I may clarify just on that point, that is actually in accordance with Institute policy. And yes, there's a reason for that rule. As I understand it, a fraternity member used his fraternity's dog to campaign, and that caused all kinds of issues. So yes, there is a reason for that rule. I would also like to ask a question: does ISU or Panhandle plan for this GM Week to institute elected
It
directors?
wouldn't be effective this GM Week to change our constitution to. It would have to be for all subsequent GM Weeks. It's just not possible for this one. It's too short notice. But yeah.
Kristen.
Can we make changes to this document? And someone's recording these changes?
Yes. It's the short answer.
All right. Who is John Goldsmith? He is not part of graduate council.
Okay, can I answer that?
Yeah.
The positions that you see on here are representatives and don't necessarily need to be members of those organizations. So when you told me that you didn't have anyone from the grad council who wanted to be the grad council rep, I named someone else.
Can you change it to grad representative instead of council because he does not speak on behalf of the council?
If Kristen yields her time.
I yield my time.
How's it usually selected? It's up to my discretion. I mean, he's been on R&E for 12 years.
He's not a grad student.
He's
not a grad student.
No.
Okay.
But he doesn't have to.
Okay, I'm just wondering what, usually it comes down to ask all the councils, is that how it works?
Well, in the Senate bylaws, there's a list of councils that I named someone from.
Okay. So
Can
usually.
you just be a member at large?
I mean,
That's technically what he would become once, because you didn't appoint anyone per the bylaws. It then goes to his discretion to appoint a member at large to replace. So at least they have the right number. Yes, I mean that can be changed.
Okay. Paul? Sorry, are you not done, Kristen? That's fine.
Kristen, are you done?
Yeah.
Okay, Paul?
Yeah, just, I need to look to find the page to be exact, but, I'd like to motion to edit the, stuff talking about campaigns since I think now we need to have the stipulations for signatures and also when and for the independent senators, if that's gonna be active this GM. Okay, well, if it's not, then I guess that's not an issue.
I was gonna make my own motion for both independent senators. Not yet, but I was going to do that.
I will add you to the queue later. Gray.
Okay. Can someone please give me a copy of the handbook, please? Because I would like to clarify these positions. I apologize, Tim, for not pointing this out to you earlier. These positions do not reflect the positions that they were appointed to. So how it works, how these people are appointed to rules and elections. There are 2 weeks at the beginning of the fall semester. During those 2 weeks, every single one of the organizations you see here are expected to appoint to rules and elections someone. If they fail to do that, the rules and elections chair is allowed to appoint a member at large. It doesn't even have to be representing the space they will be filling. And they can appoint literally anyone they want and that's to ensure
The seat is filled.
in time for freshman elections. So I will pose just a clarification. Melanie Totis is the Pan-Hellenic Council representative. Lisa DiCrescente, okay, I'll get to that later. Brandon Wynn is in fact the IFC representative. Donna Lee is in fact the Senate representative. Jonathan Goldschmidt, he is the member at large that Lisa currently occupies. Nimit Dulkar, he is technically your grad council rep because he was appointed at a time when the e-board slot was filled. And I felt that he would best represent your interests. Lisa DiCrescente can be put in the undergraduate council, executive board position, because upon asking Gretchen for another executive board member, she said, I already gave you one, that's it. So I would like those changes, including Melanie Totis' position as vice chair, simply, maybe just added Pan-Hell rep.
So what you do is more statements than motions. So if you want to motion something, spell it out.
Okay. I motion that the front now read Timothy Breen, chair, Melanie Totis, Pan-Hellenic representative and vice chair, Lisa DiCrescente, executive board, Brandon Wynn, IFC, Samara Ahmed, undergraduate council, Donna Lee, Senate, Nimit Dulkar, graduate council.
Can you write that down and give it to you?
I can. Yeah. And so I hope.
Is that friendly?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I hope this clarifies any issues you guys may have about representation.
None of it matters, just so everyone knows.
Regarding the actual procedures and rules in the handbook itself, are there any comments?
Tim, you're on the
No one else has anything.
No.
Right here.
Wait, do you want to be on?
Yes.
Okay, Mike.
In page 2, you have this introduction. Canvas and then right? Didn't know this, right? On page 2, there's a little introduction body kind of deal that says you can apply for class council, undergrad council, and all that stuff. The word graduate is not in it at all. And I mean, it's kind of crazy class councils, but I like the word graduate to get into it. So if a graduate picks up, he can say, I have a position I can fill. This would be nice. So you want to join student government paragraph in the abilities.
Okay.
Does that make sense? I don't know. I mean, this page. Sorry, this is number 2 in the corner. I don't know.
Okay.
It says class councils, which does include grad council, according to the new constitution.
That
Before that,
hasn't voted yet.
yeah. So according to the new constitution, it would be a class council, but currently it is not a class council. So we're left out of the first paragraph.
Okay. I'm switching it there.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Same deal. On all the class councils, there's a spot that says president and vice president to be voted on. At the end on page 4, the non-elected position page, where I like to have president, VP, treasurer, and secretary added to, because there are non-elected positions, but you can still technically go for them if you ran for a grad rep or a senator's position.
Okay. Do you want to write some descriptions for those and then send them?
Yeah, I'll do that to you guys.
Okay.
question for you. So if you're a candidate, how many hours of community service do you perform?
I think it's one.
It's one halfway through here, it's two halfway through here.
Is it really?
Yes.
Okay, well, it should be one.
I'm good with that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's one on page 5.
Where does it say 2?
It is 2 on page 13.
2?
Section
Yeah.
9.
Is it 2?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, where does it say 1 then?
On page 5, under service hour form.
Okay.
Each candidate is required to perform 1 hour community service for GM week activity.
Okay, that should say 2.
Okay, so that's the only, which is 1.
I mean, I copy and paste.
Which is fine, I'm just making sure what I do.
Yeah, it should say 2.
I do have a problem with having 2 hours for graduates.
I think he's just pointing out the
I just want to know
inconsistency.
what.
Okay, just to clarify,
No,
I'm
no.
asking you.
Thank you, Dr. Askin.
Okay.
Are we allowed to talk about the video in this part of the discussion as well?
Yeah.
Technically, everything's
Technically,
open.
yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
question about the video, I guess mainly only to you. Would it be okay if there was a portion of the video that was still done after spring break? Would that still be able to be approved by the committee?
I mean, I guess, but that's cutting it close.
Oh, yeah.
Seeing as campaigning starts 8 a.m. Monday after spring break. So, I mean, my answer to that would, I guess, be no.
Mike.
Hey, Tim. On page 8, it's the election rules, section 1, number 4. I have a question. It says no candidate may run for more than one position in the same class council, which includes president, vice president, class representative, and does not include senator. Does that mean you can technically run for class representative and senator?
Yeah, but when you win, you have to pick
Just
which
pick
one.
one. Okay, is that stated?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Full positions of, it says senator and grand marshal then.
But for the class officers and class reps,
What are we looking at?
you can occupy both of those. That's been traditionally.
My question is more with the rep and senator.
You can be both. Typically, I mean, I think as far as most class councils go now anyway, if you're a senator, you're a member of the class council.
Okay.
So there's no prohibition on that here.
Mike, are you done?
I'm done with that part, yeah.
Okay, Greg?
I'd just like to refute something that Tim said. The Rules and Elections Committee can in fact approve a new video because in section, oh, sorry. What
He just said they weren't going to use it.
They weren't.
But he said they can.
We can.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
I apologize. Well, okay, so I'll just take this opportunity to remind anyone that small changes like logistical errors and all that, section 15, part 2. All those things.
Queue is empty. Mike, do you have something else?
Do one second, I'll look up the section you said.
Yes.
Cool. I have here. So in section 7, number 5, you guys say you guys will release the number of ballots received, number of votes received for each registered candidate, the number of votes received for valid writing candidates receiving over 5% of the votes. Why 5%?
Because whoever wrote this 29 years ago decided on that, and we maintained that.
So to further that real fast, the grad population writes in people all the time. And I believe I was elected with 5 votes, which I believe is below 5%.
Right.
So can a petition have to be a lower number for grad students possibly, so we can see actually who was voted in?
Yes.
We can. What
The
do you
motion for
propose?
this? I don't know. So I mean, 5%, I mean, I understand that at least all of them, because I mean, Mickey Mouse, right?
Perhaps I can make a suggestion. Wait, can I read it so I can like say something intelligent? Oh, where is this located?
Circle somewhere.
Okay. And the number of votes received for all valid writing candidates receiving over 5% of the votes, or pick a number of candidates. Like, how many do you want to see? 5? 5. I motion 5.
You mean 5 total votes?
No, receiving over 5% of the votes,
Or 5 candidates members.
or if it's less than 5%, the next 5 write-ins.
Okay.
Or
Yeah.
candidates, whatever wording makes sense. Like define a number if it's less than 5%. Yes.
So realistically, Arnie always has to report the winners.
Yeah.
So even if you were below 5% but you won, you'd be reported anyway. It's just that other people with.
So the second and the third wouldn't report though?
Yeah, so if you're at that low of a number for votes, it would be just the winners reported.
Okay.
Because that's what happens anyway, you have to report the winners. So I don't know if that necessitates a change here.
So that has been rescinded. Okay. Is the queue empty?
All right, can I go?
Yeah.
All right, so first, I'd like to move that we remove the video from the handbook.
Which is where?
Well, it's not just one location.
Okay. We can go through it.
Okay.
Is it friendly amendment?
Well, he's amending his own thing.
Yeah.
So, but it's a recommendation of the committee. So.
It's friendly, but someone else can challenge him through a motion.
The motion is to remove video from all mentions in the handbook. Would you like to say something, Marcus?
Wait, remove it?
Remove it.
Yeah, we should not do that. All right, so I'm on the queue. I can talk. All right. So overall status of the video. The video came out perfectly fine, except for the last part, which is the part with the Senate room, because we couldn't hear the speaker at the time. So what I realized is that we have a camera there the whole time, so all I have to do is put a hodgepodge of different videos of senators actually doing things in the room with a muted sound, so that we're not, spoiling conversation of all our Senate meetings onto the election video. And all I have to do is mute that, have it narrated over with the disclaimers at the end of all the things that could go wrong, and then we have at the end somebody saying, "Thank you, have a nice day, good luck in your election." So I think that the Senate video could be completed within this week, and that it could be a useful asset to reducing the need for hard-to-meet information sessions for people who are always busy at 6 o'clock and 7 o'clock and 8 o'clock, like senators.
Frank?
Does the video as it stands have all of the informational stuff as far as like what people need to know and what will be provided in a standard information session?
Yes and no. The video, again, we worked on this with R&E, and we focused on the most important points that we felt needed to be known. And at multiple points in the video, I believe at 3, we say, check your handbook, check your handbook, check your handbook. And at the end of the video, there's a disclaimer that says this is not all of the information. There are more rules. And if you have any questions, check your handbook, contact a member, or check your handbook or contact a member of R&E. And then we give the email and we tell them where to find the forms and the handbook. So we refer to them to the handbook multiple times, but it still covers the main important things.
Frank? Are you done?
I'm good.
Okay, Greg.
I have also seen this video. I was the R&E contact on this. I'd like to say, Marcus, yes, you did a fantastic job, and a lot of work has been done. But I would like to say that it's close, but it's not quite there yet, and I don't think it would be quite an appropriate replacement for the current info sessions. As Marcus said, no, we do not go, it's impossible, and it wouldn't be realistic to go through every single rule in the videos. Yes, most of the important ones were included. However, some recommendations that I made, for example, making it clear that the consequences, the punishments that rules and elections could deal out in the video.
That was the disclaimer that was mentioned that we
okay. Well, I just, yeah.
Chuck?
Echoing Greg's thoughts, I think this isn't a sunk cost. We can still use this video for future dates. I think I'd be more comfortable saving it for freshman elections once we work out some of the kinks in the system. And once we kind of review it on a larger scale, then I'd be more comfortable testing it out and then using it for next GM Week elections. I guess that's where I stand. We can still use the footage. I wouldn't start over because there's no point to that. Because the rules can be updated and changed in the video. So that's kind of where I am.
I'm next on the queue. I'd just like to clarify for everyone in the room exactly what this video is, because I've been mentioning it, but obviously only a couple people have seen it because it's still under development. It is not the end-all be-all. That is the handbook, and it says it in the video. So the point of the video is to highlight the most commonly broken rules so that people are aware of them. And the video does that. The problem that Marcus has talked about that he wants to fix is a sound quality issue so that you can hear that information. So Marcus, he thinks that he can get it in on time. There's still time that if Rules and Election wants to set a deadline and he can meet that deadline, then it can still be in there. And to Greg's point, this year the video would not replace information sessions. The way it's worded in the handbook now, and if it stayed, would be that you could choose either or. Kyle's next on the queue.
I'll pass.
The queue is empty. Marcus.
I would also like to make I feel like this hasn't been very clear, maybe to people who weren't involved with the video, like writing myself. The disclaimer that I refer to as the disclaimer and what he's referred to as the possible punishments. Again, those are the same section. The problem is that when it was filmed in here, while Ernesto was saying the possible consequences, that was not able to be heard. And so what I was proposing earlier when I was going on a real tangent was that we would have a muted scene of different Senate things, so then all you hear is Ernesto or whoever is doing the part saying, you know, this is not the end-all be-all, this is what you need to know, these are the possible consequences. If you're worried about anything, check the handbook, here's the handbook. And then at the end, it's us smiling and saying, good luck, kind of like a drug commercial. So that was just something I wanted to clarify. The video definitely could be better because, again, it was a very quick project. I think it came out well, but I think that it's worth throwing on a test run at this point because we only get 2 times a year to test it. And to be perfectly honest, it's not going to be perfect for another few years. I will be long gone before it is perfect, but I think it's worth putting into the fray.
So this meeting is ending at 9. So
8:41.
8:41. So we need to get through this. I'm not limiting discussion, but make sure there's no repeating at this point. I'll just cut you off. So yeah, I can do that. It's fine. Tim, what are the other changes?
Well, I've gone through all the changes.
Okay.
Do you mean motions?
Yes.
Well, I guess I need to motion to include the independent senators in the handbook.
Okay. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Okay. Discussion on that.
What is the nomination number? Frank.
If I could recommend a nomination number, I think it should be the same as for the standard for undergrad senators, freshman and sophomore at 125.
Seconded.
Is it from?
It wasn't.
Actually,
that was a motion.
Jacob has information. Around the queue? Yes. Okay. Hasn't the IC not technically dissolved yet, and also the union Constitution hasn't been changed yet to make the IC senators directly elected yet?
Motion 1 from tonight takes care of all
So
of that.
we can do that essentially.
It's good? All right.
There's a method to this, man.
What the? All right. Awesome.
Okay.
So can I motion to make the number what the other senators are?
Yeah.
Okay. Friendly, non-friendly?
I'll second.
It's friendly, I guess.
Yeah, because it's your motion.
Yeah.
Okay. Just you still want to be on the queue?
Yeah, so this is for the independents, right? Would their nominations, since they're only elected by independents, would their nominations also have to be only independents? And is there a way to check that with the nominations?
I mean, I hadn't really considered that.
There's a way to check it.
Yeah.
Well, I know there's a
So
way
they
to
would
check
have to
it,
be
but.
independent, just because they're being elected by independents. So I feel like they should be nominated as well by independents. Same way that IFC has their, IFC and Penn Health, their way of electing through their.
Right.
Frank?
So, just, I guess I'll make recommendations as to how to handle this whole thing, which we can, write out, we can spell out later. The independent council senators, I think, should be 125 nominations from any independent, and then their election should be across, it should be on every ballot, because it, in theory, is a school-wide position for all independents. And then we can do the checks as far as the nominations and the votes within the system of vote counting and nomination counting.
Marcus?
I would just, and this is an area I'm not familiar with. So for GM week, how will the process of joining a Greek organization? I know that there is a dean that has a list of who's Greek and who isn't Greek. I don't know the timeline for that process personally. And so then when GM week comes around, where will that person be? Because if they're in the process of joining that organization, then they'll no longer be Greek, but I don't think the system will have updated to include them.
As soon as someone signs their bid, which is right after we're given it,
They're
they're automatically.
Okay. Again, I don't know.
So just to clarify.
Greg?
I'm gonna fast.
Yes.
Kyle?
Just one concern from the independent senator's perspective, as someone applying for this position, or rather running for this position, is going around soliciting nominations. How are they going to know that the people who signed their sheet are independent?
You ask.
You do ask, but it could create a great degree of difficulty.
To that point, I'm next on the queue. I'm next on the queue. By the same reason, I could go to a friend that I think is 2016, but they have the credits to be 2015, so I would have to ask, do I represent you? Will you nominate me? You still have to ask. Anyone else have to?
We're doing well, so. All
Anything
right.
else?
Is that everything?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments?
What's the final verdict on the video? Is he gonna try to finish?
His motion is striking any mention of the video in the handbook. That's currently what we're voting on, in addition to the other changes.
I would just like to ask, is there any way we could just do a deadline for the video? Like, in the next, if it's not done in the next week, then we don't put it in, but if it's done in the next week, we can then talk about it or put it in. I don't know if you're accepting of that or.
Yeah, I mean, I can do a deadline. When do you think you could have it done?
The only person I would really need to talk to is not in the room right now, and that would be Gabe, where I can say.
Gabe's right.
He's
Yeah.
over there.
Gabe is a champion, has been standing most of this time, so.
Yeah, Gabe!
I'm so sorry. I spent the last 20 minutes thinking you were.
Where is he? I wish he'd come back.
13 minutes, so Gabe,
Or
Marcus.
so you heard what my plan was about the video.
Yeah, to take clips in the site meetings and
Can I
then
have
relay
those?
audio over that.
Yeah.
Explaining. Yeah, that's possible.
Okay, cool. That's all I need to know.
So can you have it done by Friday?
Can I have the clips by Wednesday?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, deadline is this Friday.
What time Friday? Very important.
6 p.m.
Yeah, okay, 6 p.m. I'll have it to you by 5.
I'm not even going to pretend to word that into a motion, so I'm just going to accept that. All right, other comments?
Fine, you Senate agreement.
I wasn't sure if you were giving me this look like I want to speak.
Just wants to
I'm already tired.
I guess at this point.
Can I make a motion to vote?
No, please don't. Other comments? Seeing none, we're going to move to vote.
What are we going on?
We're voting on the motion.
I have one more thing to say.
Oh, okay.
Real quick, the one that I sent out to everyone doesn't have poly deadlines on it. I have those now.
The what deadlines?
The poly deadlines.
Yeah.
To put your information in poly.
Okay.
So,
We love
Okay.
the poly.
All right, so we're voting on this motion, not the whole handbook yet. All those in favor of the motion?
To do what
The
Tim
changes
said.
to strike the video unless it is completed by Friday at 6 p.m. And to make changes to the independent council members, which will be elected by 125 members of their constituency, which is independents.
The grads.
And Greeks, and the grads.
And the Greek and grad changes, which are more of just,
Paul had a
changes
different-
nothing but just
I
wording.
have what? What did I do?
Were you asking if grads count as in the independent constituency?
I don't know, but we
Okay.
may as well ask that.
Yes, grads,
Are there comments on that? What? All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay. The whole motion itself on the handbook. Comments? Questions? Concerns?
Mike,
On page 14, under grad reps, you say we can, grad council is responsible for representing graduate reviews, 5 class representatives are elected, and then you say no more students may apply for membership at large to grad council. Can you go more in detail about that? No?
I don't know. What does it even mean? I don't know.
What page?
What is it?
Page 4.
Could you repeat that?
Page 4, under grad representatives, 5, the grad council is responsible for representing graduate reviews. 5 class representatives are elected, and then it says no more students may be applying for membership at large to the graduate council. I just want more details on
They can ask Kirsten if they're big good enough to join the council.
I mean, none of these aren't actual rules, these are just kind of the.
Yeah, these are technically aren't rules.
Yeah, I agree with that. Our bylaws don't state that.
Bradley?
Yeah.
Okay.
anyone else on the queue? For the general handbook, all of it.
Seeing none, we're going to move to vote. All those in favor? Keep them up.
Yes.
All those opposed? I need an official count for this. This motion passes 20-0. All right, committee chairs.
No.
Rapid fire, nothing long,
Did anything
absolute
happen?
essential updates. So rules and elections. Tim, you passed the handbook. Is there anything else? Okay. Communications, Shoshana.
Tomorrow is dinner in Commons.
What?
This is our last opportunity before campaigning starts and you all get super, super busy. We're gonna go to students, we're gonna talk to them about the amazing things we've done this year, and if anyone's interested in running for election, this is the opportunity to tell them the rules and get them interested, because someone who's on the fence, like last year, we actually got some people to run by going to them during dinner at Commons and saying, let's go this. That's tomorrow, 5 to 7 p.m. This is instead of communications meeting, so all communication members must be there. And please, 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 senators, dedicate a half hour if you have to. I'll swipe you in for food. You have to eat sometime. I will feed you. Just go and participate.
Where are we meeting, Shoshana?
If you need to be swiped in, use my cell phone number and I will swipe you in. You don't have to meet anywhere. Just walk into Commons and talk to people.
What time?
5 to 7. Dedicate as much time as you can.
Okay.
Wear your polos.
John, yeah, wear your polos. John's not here. He had to leave, as did, well, a lot of people did. Frank, executive board.
There's gonna be projectors in a couple of rooms. See me for details if you want.
Okay, Tina,
I have it.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay, FSC, the snack machine has been arrived at the 4th floor. They're gonna add a drink machine soon
In the library.
in the library, so the students can use that. To-go meal soups are coming soon. Car sharing is being voted on committee in Thursday, and we'll come back to the Senate Monday following spring break, which is the 17th. And then I worked on the shuttle stop video. It was technically created, but because of copyright laws, it was taken down. We're gonna try to edit it and get it back up to advertise the shuttle stop. That's FSC. My videos are just.
Thank you. Kyle.
Our work with excuse policy settled on a final draft that was agreeable to all parties. This draft was voted on last Wednesday in SLC and approved. It'll be going to the Senate not the first Monday, but the second Monday following spring break, so as to not overlap with the Zipcar presentation. We have a survey going out looking for final information related to res halls and the possibility of an on-campus pharmaceutical delivery service. This will be going out imminently. I just am waiting to hear from Michael about any remaining funds SLC might have so we can incentivize. Finally, our taxi proposal is complete. However, before we move forward, given student concerns, I want to talk to Dr. Sams.
Okay, thank you. Gabe?
This week, I was able to get a meeting with Sodexo after numerous attempts, and we're probably going to be getting new computers for the Rathskeller downstairs in case you notice one of the screens is offline. Also, the TV we ordered for the welcome lobby will be coming in. And it's,
Okay. Frank, Constitution. It's over. Okay. Lisa, handheld.
Nothing that's important right now.
James, I'm sorry, I forgot to add you to the agenda. IFC.
Nothing important right now.
Okay, graduate council.
We have a potluck this Wednesday night, 6 to 8 p.m. The grad council is also for all the cookies you have tonight, and we don't want them home, so take them all.
Okay, don't leave yet. Have their.
We agree with bylaws, and they're coming to sign it soon.
Yes, they are. All right, minutes. Have any changes been made to the minutes? I passed them around. Could they come back to me? Quickly, because then we can end the meeting. I want to make sure we have minutes here.
Wait, what?
No, that way. Any changes? There's two sets of minutes, one from last meeting and the meeting before.
No.
Come on, let's hit mine.
Can someone pass the other set of minutes up? Yes, yeah. Okay, other set of minutes. Where are they? Someone?
There's no minutes.
There was the Greek form minutes I sent, I passed around. This is all.
Did anyone make any changes to that?
I also sent them out last night, or last, in the morning. Any edits that you want to make? All right. All those in favor of the minutes? All those opposed? Minutes passed. Meeting adjourned.